Good morning. My name is Dr. Divya Pradhan, and I'm going to talk to you about connective tissues. First thing, what are the characteristics of connective tissues? Well, of all the tissues, connective tissue is the most abundant type of tissue. All connective tissues have a common origin. They originate from the mesoderm of the body. They have a varying degree of vascularity. Some connective tissues, for example cartilage, are avascular, that means they do not have blood supply, or like the dense connective tissue has a very limited vascularity, that means limited blood supply or very small blood supply, or then of course there is the blood connective tissue itself. Cells are very diffuse. They have plenty of intercellular spaces, which makes them different from epithelial tissues, which are closely packed with little or no intercellular space. The most important characteristic of a connective tissue is its extracellular matrix that the cells secrete. This matrix is the one that makes the connective tissue, each connective tissue, unique to itself and be able to perform the unique function. For example, the extracellular matrix of blood is actually plasma. It's fluid, it's liquid. What are the functions of connective tissue? Number one, bind. For example, tendons, ligaments, these bind bone to a bone or muscle to a bone. Provide support and protection. For example, the skeletal or the bone tissue, which supports and protects the skull, protects the brain, serves as a framework. Once again, skeletal tissue provides a framework. Fills spaces, for example, the areolar tissue that we will study soon. Stores fat as the adipose tissue, which stores fat. Produces blood cells. Example is the bone marrow in the long bones are hematopoietic tissue. It produces blood cells. These blood cells help us fight against infection, and then this is the repair of the body. What are the components of connective tissue? There are three components of a connective tissue. The ground substance or the extracellular matrix. It is primarily made up of interstitial fluid, which is different for different connective tissues. For example, the interstitial fluid can be very liquidy, or it can be rock-like hardness, so therefore there is very little interstitial fluid. Cell adhesion proteins, for example, are the laminins, which bind cells together, and then are the proteoglycans, which are a polysaccharide, mucopolysaccharide. They have a core protein from which these polysaccharides, that are the gags, they stick out. These gags are nothing but the glycosaminoglycans. Gags are primarily two types, chondroitin sulfate and hyaluronic acid. More the gags, more viscous or liquidy will be the extracellular matrix. Fibers, three types of fibers. Collagen fibers, which are the tough, which can bear huge amount of tensile forces, appear in bundles and appear white. They are called the white collagen fibers. Elastic fibers are long, branching, yellow, delicate looking. These provide a lot of elasticity. Reticular fibers are short collagen fibers, and these provide a sort of a network and support for different tissues inside organs. There are varying kind of cells. Fibroblasts are spindle-shaped cells which actually secrete fibers. Macrophages are the phagocytic cells, amoeboid, which actually eat up any foreign body. Mast cells are the sentinels that set up an inflammatory response when there is any invasion by a foreign body. when there is an invasion, they will set up three sort of secretions going on. Heparin, which is an anticoagulant, histamine, which allows the blood vessels to become leaky, and the white blood cells to come out of the blood vessels into the area of infection, and the proteases, which are protein degrading enzyme. And of course, there are other specialized cells depending on the tissue type. For example, the blood cell typically has RBC, WBC, and platelets. A bone cell will have, again, a unique cell type called the osteoblast or osteocyte. Something of interest is these specialized cells, when they are young, when they're immature, they have the prefix blast. When they mature, they have the prefix cyte. Did I say prefix? I'm sorry, suffix. So for example, osteoblast is an immature bone cell, and an osteocyte is a mature bone cell. The loose connective tissues is the first kind of connective tissue, and there are three types: areolar, adipose, reticular. Areolar is a loose connective tissue. What it looks like is it has these bundles of collagen fibers and loose fibroblasts, and loose these cells, the spindle-shaped cells or the fibroblasts. And then are these branching elastic fibers. Along with that, there are mast cells, macrophages that are floating around in the loose extracellular matrix. Areolar tissue is the most common type of tissue, and it's a filler tissue found in almost all organs. It is typically found under the skin, under all mucous membranes, existing as lamina propria. The function of the areolar tissue is to provide support, elasticity, hold body fluids. This is the one when there's any inflammation that soak up a lot of water and swell and form what we see as edema, and defend against infections because of the macrophages as well as the WBCs that are found in the areolar tissue, and they store nutrients. Adipose is very much like areolar, but made up of very unique cells that have this unique ability to store nutrients, especially fat. These cells are called the adipocytes. Excuse me. In an adipocyte, huge amount of fat can be stored, pushing the nucleus and cytoplasm to the periphery. So they, of course, appear white. Common locations are under the skin, around kidney, and the hard working heart. Under the skin, I'm sure we are all familiar with the blubber that is found under the skin of the whale. Function is energy reserve, insulation, and padding. Interestingly, there are two types of adipose tissue, the white fat and the brown fat. The brown fat is typically seen in infants, and it is used to burn the lipid so as to warm the blood during circulation. And the reason is that the infants or children do not have the ability to generate heat by shivering. Next is the reticular tissue, which is made up of a network of reticular fibers in a loose ground matrix, typically found in lymphoid organs such as spleen as well as in the bone marrow. The function is that the fibers form an internal network, a mattress, a mesh, a skeleton that supports other cell types, especially the blood cells. The next is the dense connective tissue, regular and irregular dense connective tissue. Regular dense connective tissue is made up of collagen fibers that run parallel to each other and in the direction of the pull. In between these parallel wave-like collagen fibers are the fibroblasts. The beauty of this regular dense connective tissue is that these can stretch when pull is applied to a certain extent. But after that, they will not give in to the pull. Another interesting thing is that the dense connective tissue has a very limited blood supply. Therefore, once torn, the repair is very, very hard. Typically found in tendon, which join the muscle to a bone, fascia that surround the muscles, and ligaments that join bone to a bone. Irregular dense connective tissue, like regular dense connective tissue, is made up of collagen bundles, but these collagen bundles run in varying different directions, and in different directions so that the pull can be exerted in different directions. These are typically found in the dermis, that is below the epidermis of the skin, capsules around organs such as kidneys, muscles, nerves, cartilage, and bone. Now are the specialized connective tissues. These are very unique connective tissues: blood, bone, and cartilage. Blood is very unique because it is made up of three kinds of cells: RBC or the erythrocytes, WBCs or the leukocytes, platelets or the thrombocytes, which lie in a liquid extracellular matrix called plasma. The fibers as such are hidden because they are in the form of soluble protein, which will precipitate to form fibers during clotting. Blood will be studied more in detail later. For now, if you just know how to recognize blood tissue and recognize at least the WBCs, some RBCs, WBCs, and platelets, I think that should be fine. The function of the blood is, of course, transport gases, nutrients, hormones, and excretory products. Bone. Bone, if you cut a section of the bone, it will appear to form, you will see, round units which are called the osteon. The osteon has a central canal, you can see out here. The central canal is through which the bone gets its blood supply as well as its nerve innervations. Around the central canal, the extracellular matrix, which is a hard rock-like matrix made up of collagen fibers and calcium inorganic salts such as calcium carbonate, calcium phosphate. Around the central canal, the extracellular matrix is deposited in the form of layers called lamellas, right here. The cells that secrete the extracellular matrix at a young immature stage are called osteoblast, and when they mature, they are called osteocyte, lie in spaces called lacunae. And these cells, they are connected to each other by very fine canals called the canaliculi. The bone, the function of the bone is protection, provide framework, support, help in movement. We are going to talk about the functions of the bone in the next unit. Cartilage. The cartilage has its uniqueness because it is pliable and less dense than the bone. So it has more tensile strength than a dense regular tissue, but it is less dense and hard than a bone. Cartilage is made up of, again, chondroblasts when they are immature or chondrocytes when they are mature, which lie in lacunae. So typically you will see these cells that lie in spaces look like this. The matrix is made up of GAG, glycosaminoglycans, fibers, mostly collagen and sometimes elastic, and water. Interestingly, about 80% extracellular matrix of cartilage is water. There are three types of cartilages: hyaline, fibrous, and elastic. Hyaline cartilage is made up of these cartilage cells which are distributed randomly and sparsely in a matrix primarily made up of collagen fibers. Hyaline cartilage appears white or bluish white in color and is found in places where there is limited amount of flexibility but which is exposed to tensile forces. For example, the tip of the nose, the cartilage joining the ribs to the sternum at the end of long bone. Now the embryonic cartilage is hyaline cartilage and persists in childhood as the epiphyseal plate. The next is the fibrous cartilage, where the cartilage cells are in layers with the non-elastic collagen fibers. Fibrous cartilage is found in places which are subjected to pressure, compressibility, and typically found in the intervertebral discs. Elastic fibers are made up of cartilage cells, again, distributed in an extracellular matrix rich in yellow elastic fibers. Elastic cartilage, is found in places which is subjected to lot of pull or for example, like the pinna or the epiglottis, which is subjected to stretchability. That's the word I was looking for. And with this, we come to the end of the presentation of connective tissue, and I thank you for giving me your attention.